Over the course of this series, we have studied the hands he built, the punch that needed only 1 inch, the speed that cameras couldn't follow, the philosophy born on a dark harbor in Hong Kong, the injury that almost took everything, and what he wrote in the silence of recovery. Everything we have covered points toward the same question, not how Bruce Lee trained, not what Bruce Lee believed. How did he become what he became? He left an answer, not in one place, in many places. Notebooks, letters, interviews, the margins of books he was reading, the pages of the Tao of Jeet Kune Do written flat on his back. What follows are 10 principles drawn from that body of thought. The rules that ran underneath everything we have discussed, stated simply, but carrying the full weight of a life spent proving that they work. Rule 1. Subtract, don't add. Lee said it directly. The way to mastery is not adding more. It is removing everything that isn't essential until only the essential remains. He applied this to martial arts, stripping away the decorative techniques, the traditional forms kept alive by habit rather than function, everything that looked impressive but didn't work under real pressure. But the principle goes further than combat. Most people trying to improve themselves add more habits, more commitments, more routines, more goals. They build outward. Lee built inward. He removed. He simplified. He took an art form built on complexity and made it faster and more dangerous by removing everything that complexity was hiding. Hack away the unessential. What remains is the work. Rule 2. One thing, 10,000 times. Rule 2. One thing, 10,000 times. He was precise about this. He said he did not fear the man who had practiced 10,000 different things once each. He feared the man who had practiced one thing 10,000 times. This is not an argument against learning broadly. Lee was one of the most broadly learned martial artists in history. He studied boxing, fencing, wrestling, philosophy, anatomy, film. But he understood the difference between knowledge and mastery. Knowledge is acquired. Mastery is encoded, driven so deep into the nervous system that it no longer requires conscious direction. The 10th thousand repetition is not the same as the first 1,000. It is in a different category entirely. The hand that has thrown a punch 10,000 times knows something about that punch that 10,000 hours of thinking about it cannot teach. Depth, not breadth. Then breadth can be added from a position of strength. Rule 3. Action over deliberation. Rule 3. Act before the thinking becomes an obstacle. Lee wrote, "If you spend too much time thinking about a thing, you will never get it done." This is not anti-intellectual. Lee was one of the most intellectually voracious people in his field. He read constantly, thought deeply, and believed in understanding the principles beneath the techniques. But he had also trained himself, through the very repetition we just discussed, to the point where the gap between seeing the right thing to do and doing it had collapsed almost to nothing. The thinking had already been done. In the 10,000 repetitions, in the years of reading and reflection, in the training. When the moment arrives, the thinking is finished. What remains is action. If your preparation is real, you won't need to deliberate in the moment. The deliberation belongs earlier. The moment belongs to what you've built. Rule 4. Absorb, discard, create. Rule 4. Absorb what is useful. Discard what is not. Add what is uniquely your own. This was Lee's instruction for learning itself, the method he applied to every discipline he studied. He did not become a student of boxing and follow it wherever it led. He took from boxing what functioned: the cross, the jab, the footwork, the understanding of broken rhythm, and left behind the conventions that boxing carried only because it was boxing. He did the same with fencing, with wrestling, with Wing Chun, with philosophy, with every source he encountered. The result was not a mixed system. The result was his own system, shaped by what he had absorbed from many sources but belonging to none of them. Most people learn by addition. They accumulate techniques from every teacher and end up carrying all of it. Lee learned by refinement. He took the gold from every source and left the vessel behind. Rule 5. Train the mind before the body. Rule 5. The mind before the body. Always the mind first. Everything we have discussed in this series, the forearms, the speed, the 1-inch punch, had a foundation that made it possible. That foundation was not physical. Lee trained meditation alongside his martial arts from an early age, not as a spiritual practice separate from his combat training, as the practice that made the combat training possible. A body that moves faster than a camera is not simply a body with trained fast twitch fibers. It is a body directed by a mind that does not pause between recognition and response. The physical speed came from mental speed. The physical power came from mental clarity. The ability to throw a punch from 1 inch away came from a mind that had removed every obstacle between intention and action, through years of sitting still with discomfort until the discomfort stopped producing hesitation. Train the mind and the body follows. Train only the body and the mind becomes the ceiling. Rule 6. Have no fixed form. Rule 6. Have no fixed form. This is the water principle applied to identity, and it is the most demanding rule on this list. Most people build a fixed form of themselves and then defend it. A set of beliefs, a set of methods, a set of identities that they hold constant regardless of what new information arrives. Lee called this the prison of style, and he identified it in martial arts, but understood it as a universal problem. The practitioner who commits to one style trains their response to every situation through one lens. Everything that falls outside that lens, they are unprepared for. His instruction was not to have no identity. It was to hold your identity loosely enough that new experience could change it. What you were yesterday should be the floor, not the ceiling. What you are today is subject to revision tomorrow if tomorrow brings something worth revising for. The fixed form is comfortable. It is also the thing that stops growing first. Rule 7. Difficulty is the work. Rule 7. The difficulty is not the obstacle to the work. The difficulty is the work. Lee did not pray for easy training. He did not seek the method that would make mastery comfortable. He understood, in his body, from the forearms that he had trained to failure every single day, that the resistance is not something to be removed from the path. The resistance is the path. The injury he sustained in 1970, the 6 months flat on his back, the fear that his body might not return, produced the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. The difficulty was not an interruption of the work. The difficulty was how the deepest part of the work got done. He wrote, "Do not pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to endure a difficult one. Not because difficulty is noble in itself, because the capacity to endure and continue through difficulty is the only reliable path to becoming something that difficulty cannot break." Rule 8. Know yourself completely. Rule 8. Know yourself, not the version you perform for others. Lee was precise about this. He said that the most important knowledge a practitioner could have was accurate self-knowledge, a clear, undefended understanding of what they could and couldn't do, where their training was strong and where it was not. Most people substitute reputation for self-knowledge. They know what others think of them. They know how they perform when being watched. They know the version of themselves that exists in other people's perception. Lee trained alone for thousands of hours. No audience, no performance, no reputation to maintain or protect, just the work and the honest assessment of how the work was going. Self-knowledge of that kind, precise, unsparing, earned through time alone with the truth, is the only foundation that doesn't shift when the pressure increases. You cannot build something solid on a flattering self-image. Rule 9. Live for something beyond yourself. Rule 9. Real living is living for others. Lee said this directly, and for a man whose public image was built on individual physical achievement, the fastest, the strongest, the most technically precise, it might be the most unexpected thing he ever wrote. But it is consistent with everything else in his philosophy. A man training 10,000 repetitions of a single technique is not just building himself. He is building a standard, a demonstration of what is possible, that every person who watches him carries forward. Lee's students did not just learn techniques. They learned what a human being could become when they decided, with complete commitment, to find out. That knowledge, that it is possible, that a body and mind can be built this far, that the ceiling is higher than almost anyone believes, is the gift he left. Not the films, not the records, the demonstration itself. When the work you do lifts the ceiling for everyone who sees it, when it shows people a possibility they hadn't considered, it has become something other than personal achievement. It has become a gift, and a gift, unlike a trophy, lasts. Rule 10, begin. Rule 10, begin. Not when the conditions are right, not when the preparation is complete, not when the fear is gone, because the fear does not go first. The action goes first, and sometimes, not always but sometimes, the fear follows it out of the room. Lee was not born knowing what he knew. He was not born with those forearms or that speed or that philosophy. He began young in Hong Kong in a small training space, and he kept beginning every morning for the rest of his life. The training is the beginning, the first repetition of the 10,000, the first sentence of the book written flat on a bed, the first movement back onto a training floor that a doctor said you might never return to. Every principle in this series has the same starting point, the moment you decide to stop thinking about it and take the first step. Not the 10,000th step, the first one. The first one is always the same step, and it is always available right now. That is the whole teaching. This is the final episode of the Bruce Lee series on the Bushido Code. If this series found you at the right time, if something in these 12 videos landed, then you already know what the next step is. Subscribe to the Bushido Code. The Samurai series continues, and the deeper you go, the more you will find that the warriors of feudal Japan and the man who moved too fast for the camera were, in the most important ways, asking exactly the same question. How far can a human being go if they are willing to begin?